Good morning and welcome to another video. Before I get into today's video, which will be a full day of eating, in addition to me talking about how I healed my relationship with food after having an eating disorder, I just want to make a disclaimer that this is the trigger warning, that if you are in a state of mind where you don't have a good relationship with food, if you have an eating disorder, if you had one, if you're not completely recovered, maybe this isn't the best video for you to watch. Maybe because talking about it would be a little bit triggering. It took years for me to even talk about it and to share some of my learnings when it comes to food. So if you're not ready to have that discussion, I would suggest you just click off. But I do appreciate you for visiting. And with that being said, let's get into the video. So breakfast is done. You saw I got rye bread, pineapple poblano, avocado, no, not avocado, guacamole, eggs. I pulled out 3 eggs, but I ended up actually using 4 eggs, and then I used the rest of the prosciutto that I had that I didn't want to go bad, although it's pretty long lasting. I just want to finish it up. I think the first thing that I did to start healing my relationship with food is to kind of know where it came from. I say that a lot of the things that we do now in our teenage or adult years are just programming that has been programmed into our subconscious from a little age. When I was a baby, I would cry all the time. All the time. And my mom told me that the only way to stop me from crying is to give me a bottle of food. And I already was a big baby coming out. And then during my life outside of the womb, I had double the amount of food given to me because it basically shut me up. Since crying and then given food was the only way to shut me up, my body realized that the only way to soothe my emotions was through food. And that took me all the way till now. When I was ever in a mood, angry, sad, whatever, I wouldn't show my emotions. I would just eat, and that caused me to be overweight. There are so many stories that my family has of me crying because I can't eat, or crying in general over food and all that stuff, and they just thought I was a fat child and being like a piggy person, to be honest. But learning how my mom treated me and my emotions with food was never something that sustained me, it was something that soothed me. I believe that at the time of me being a baby, there were just a lot of things that caused a baby to cry because the energy was off. And so for me, knowing how I am now, when energy is weird, I get really emotional. That's how I was when I was a baby, but no one knew that. Knowing that now made me upset because I'm like, it felt like I kind of never had a chance to have a healthy relationship with food. So knowing that food was a way to help soothe my emotions, whatever emotion it was, and then having it be kind of at my detriment because I was so overweight, and then trying to diet and exercise, it wasn't helping. I started to see food as the enemy. And so I tried starving myself. Because I utilized food to soothe my emotions, starving wasn't really successful. I couldn't do it. And the more I restricted, the more I ended up binging on food. So because starving myself didn't work and my emotions still weren't soothed, that extreme of restriction turned into overeating. Because I wasn't only trying to minimize my food, but I was trying to minimize my emotions, and it got to the point where I couldn't do that anymore, and I just had to eat, so I overate to the point where I felt really sick, and my stomach was just big and bloated, and I was just uncomfortable, and that's when I turned to throwing up my food. When I found that, I actually saw that I started losing weight, so I was like, okay, so I can still utilize food to soothe my emotions and then just throw it up. And it was just vicious cycle of binge eating and then throwing up, binge eating and throwing up, and no one knew. I think one time my sister walked in on me, but I just said I was sick. She wasn't buying it. Anyway, moving on. And then after high school, I no longer threw up my food. I wasn't bulimic. However, I was still restricting and then binging, but I didn't throw up. And so my weight actually escalated even more. So in college, I combated my overeating with excessive gym going. And there will be a video of how I healed the relationship with my body, but it's gonna be a different video. And I prided myself in not throwing up. However, my food relationship was still restricting and binging, not really assessing my emotions in a healthy way, like trying to figure it out, just trying to swallow them literally with food. That all in general is my relationship with food up until I was about 26 years old. I'm 27 now, and I'm still learning how to heal my relationship with food. But one of the things that I say in my coaching, like for spiritual and mindset coaching, is to know your truth. It was only a year ago where I realized how deeply rooted the unhealthy relationship with food went because of my childhood. And since knowing that truth, I can now like move forward with understanding why I do what I do. Okay, so like everything, now you know the background of my relationship with food, more or less. If anything, it was a huge summary. There's a lot more pain and tears behind this story, but you know, we ain't got time or energy for that today. Today's a simple, dimple video of how I healed and what do I do to heal. So, know your truth, know the story behind it. So when it comes to knowing your truth, I think it's good to think back on your life. And it may be a little bit triggering to like think back on your life at these moments, because it was definitely triggering for me to like look back on the moments where I treated my body and myself and my relationships with such restriction and fault and just negativity, where I'm not in that place anymore. It was very hurtful to look back, but looking back is a really good way to move forward, and that's my story. So what are some things that I did to heal my relationship with food? One of them is stop seeing food as good or bad. And that has been something I think a lot of people say, like, food isn't good or bad, it's just food. And that is the case. Anything in moderation is okay. Anything in excess can be detrimental to you in any way. That's the thing. And so for the longest time, I saw foods as good or bad, and I restricted myself for having certain foods, which in turn made me overdo it whenever I allowed myself to eat those no-no foods. So how I combated that was keeping the food that I enjoy, all of them, from the strawberry to the strawberry cake, whatever I wanted and liked and craved, I allowed myself to have it in my home and to eat it. That in itself is just crazy to me, because I always thought that like, if you don't want to eat it, you don't have it around. But that's like saying I'm never going to drink again, and so you avoid bars, you avoid restaurants, you avoid liquor stores, and then one day when you just happen to be at a random event when there's liquor and you can't control it not being around, you lose control, because it's easy when it's not in front of you and it's a little bit harder when it is in front of you. And so what I did is make sure that those things were in front of me, and I allowed myself to eat it, and I told myself, it's okay, I'm craving it. When I don't allow myself to have certain foods in my home, when I'm out and about and eating with friends, I overdo it every single time. And I will say I am at a point where I can do that. And if you're not in a point where you can have those foods around and not overdo it, that's fine too. But that's one way that I personally allow myself to have a better relationship with food. And to tell you the truth, having those things around, I didn't overeat them. I had them until they satiated me, like ice cream. This ice cream. I used to love eating tubs and tubs of this ice cream, right? I bought this ice cream, and I think it was maybe a few weeks ago, and it's less than halfway done. Even buying it, I was kind of like, if I have it, I'm going to overeat it. If I have it, I'm going to splurge too much. But I told myself I'm no longer in that place where I have to restrict. I wanted this, and so I got it. And to be honest, in the past 3 weeks, I've barely ate it. I had it when I have cravings of chocolate. I have a couple spoonfuls, and then that's it. It feels safe to have it around because I don't view it as something bad and to be out of control with. I view it as something that I really like and I like the taste of, and so I want to have around. In addition to not seeing food as good or bad, food is not just about sustaining human life, but it's about memories, and it's about enjoyment and culture and love and just the abundance of life. And that was taken away from me. I personally took that away from me because I was just focused on the consumption of it. So in addition to not seeing food as good or bad, also see it as an experience, an event where you enjoy just the company around you and you guys can all experience the same kind of meal together. I made cauliflower wings for the first time and I'm gonna try them on camera before I talk to you about the second thing. Fork. I'm gonna burn my fucking mouth off. I'll say this. You cannot trick me. That is spicy. Another way that I healed my relationship with food is by actually cooking my food. I used to love cooking when I was little. Love cooking, love baking. And what turned into a really nice cooking skill or baking skill turned into like the most blandest shit you can ever find to make. Like I made chicken breast with no seasoning. I made broccoli and I like had no carbs, barely had any carbs. Everything that I made was bland, lifeless, and flavorless. That is bland. And just not fun because I wasn't eating to enjoy it. I was eating to barely sustain my life. What helps my relationship with food now is actually finding new recipes to make, having fun in the kitchen and learning to do new flavors and new ingredients and try to surprise my palate with some things. Carolina Reaper paste, it's so good, it's so spicy, to me anyway. And that's fine. That's probably not to anybody else, but what has helped me with my relationship with food is to actually cook my food and to find different recipes that maybe, and I don't aim for recipes that are like low carb, low this, healthy this, healthy this. I just wanted to know what cauliflower wings tasted like. And so I made it and it just happened to be a healthy alternative, but I could have baked them, but I fried them and that's good with me. So something that I did for my relationship with food is to cook and to touch my food and to like, it's gonna sound weird, but be one with my food because I'm a spiritual person. And so I know that rituals are magic, and that's a ritual between how you wake up, how you go to sleep, how you go out throughout the day. You have a ritual, you have something that you do over and over and over again. And something about rituals that is in the community is touching or talking to certain things, like drinking water. If you drink water every day, a ritual you can do is talk to your water, tell it that like this water will hydrate me and bring me abundance, right? So when I touch my food and I'm giving my intention and love into my food, it makes me feel better when I eat it. So for me, making something just it's like a little love note to my body. Especially making something different and new and flavorful, it helps me with my food relationship. And in the same way, I would want to give my body something full of life when it comes to food and flavors and all that stuff. When I go out to eat, I look for the thing that most excites me on the menu, and then that has just, again, full of flavor and full of items, and I just want to see how it all mixes together and how it tastes. And I think it could possibly be that I'm undoing all the years of restriction by going for the most flavorful and the most like exciting thing in the menu, but that's how I healed it because I've seen it not as something detrimental to my life, but something that adds to it. So cooking my own food helps me with my relationship with food. And I do go out to eat, I just said that, but touching my food, it's like a love note to my body and I love it. Another thing that I do when it comes to my relationship with food, and this goes back to knowing that even when I was younger, it was used to soothe emotions. So I was a very emotional eater. Or I would like to say I was made to be an emotional eater. We're not blaming here, because it is not your fault what happened to you, but it's your responsibility to heal from it. I have to constantly check in with myself when I'm feeling overwhelmed or chaotic or out of control, to be like, hey, how can we and I find myself, I find my mind drifting to something that I can probably eat or inhale or whatever, I check in with myself and I'm like, hey, I understand that you're feeling this way, and I understand you want to do this thing, but let's try to figure out a different way to calm how you're feeling. And if you still want to eat this thing, that's fine, eat it, because you're not eating it to soothe emotions, you're eating it just for the taste. And that takes taking a step back, which I had to practice talking to myself. Because coming from a place of full restriction, I went surely to just letting myself have whatever I want. And I'm trying to find balance in that. So to help me figure out how to be more calm in when I have extreme emotions that are throwing me for a loop, I would dance it out. I would breathe, take a deep breath in and then exhale for the same amount of time you inhaled. I would stretch. I would try to move. I would also just kind of sit down and just be silent and still. So meditate, kind of, but just also sit down and kind of feel all of it, right? And just be just let that feeling pass through me. I know you're feeling a little bit out of control right now, and that's fine. This is a very overwhelming thing that's happening. I know you feel overwhelmed. It's just assuring myself that, hey, assuring myself and validating my feeling, something that I didn't get when I was younger, and then working through them, letting myself know that it's okay, and again, processing that emotion in a healthy way of me just physically giving it the attention it needs in that moment and not trying to escape that feeling with food. That's basically it. Another thing that I would do is learn how to be satiated. The culture that I grew up with of finishing your plate. I don't know if you did, but for Black families, it's very rude, disrespectful to not finish your plate. It's also bad manners or just a bad thing in general not to finish a plate of food. Being forced to finish a plate of food programs you to turn off your satiation or satiety receptor. You can't really feel when you're full, or you can feel when you're full, but because you're being told to finish your plate, you have to surpass that and finish it. So you're pretty much pushing your body past the limits of food it can hold, or food that it wants to hold, or food that you just need, and you're overdoing it basically. One of the things that has helped me is learning how to be okay with not finishing a plate or telling somebody that I have had enough. It takes slowly eating and enjoying the meal and then allowing those receptors to take hold, which really honestly may not take hold for a while. So it's really important to eat slow and eat intentionally, which I know all of this sounds like a lot of work, right? It's okay, it sounds like a lot of work just to eat food and have a good relationship, but I do think it's worth it. Any of the things and any of the goals we have in life, it does take work, but it's all worth it. With all that I said, there is one more meal that I want to make today. It is a blueberry crumble that I saw on TikTok, and I'm excited to make it because I also bought these little mini skillets. And that'll be our last meal today. Because I remember when there were so many times I just stopped eating sweets and stopped eating desserts because I saw them as bad. Now,
I really wanted to get it right.
Dessert's my favorite thing.
Trying to find some balance in my life. I never really put up a fight, and now I'm losing sleep. What if I lost touch? What if I'll never get it right? I try to follow my heart, but I lost it somehow. Wish that someone could say it'll all be okay. Just listen to me as I say. Listen to me as I slow it down. Dreams still yours if you want it. Breathe the ride, 'cause those ups and those downs is what makes it worth it. Slow it down.
Okay, so the recipe that I thought that I liked and saved, I did not. So I went off basic memory alone, and flavors that I remember being in crumbles are stuff like that, and then a lot of research on TikToks of other people's crumbles. And figured it out from there. So let's taste it. I will say I like more blueberry. I did coat the top a lot with the crumb because, well, I made a fucking lot of it. I don't want it to go to waste. I would say more blueberry. Way more blueberry. And then maybe I can put it in there for a little bit more, could get a little bit more crunch on top. It took me years to realize why I do what I do when it comes to food and why I act the way I act and felt about it the way I felt about it. But I'm still grateful that I got to the point where I can be aware of why I do what I do and why I feel the way I feel and make it better. Because food, we do need to sustain life, but also it's a beautiful thing that people add so much culture and flavor and experience to. And it's something to be enjoyed and not hated or restricted. And I know there's so many other things in our life that cause us to look at food as the bad guy, and I didn't want that anymore for myself. And the things that I mentioned in this video is how I started and will continue to improve my relationship with food. And I hope in sharing it with you learn different ways, or maybe it brought awareness to you in different ways that you don't have that good of a relationship with food. Or if you do, that's also great. And if something I mentioned in this video was something that you do, or you do something different, let me know in the comments. Confirm, deny, share, because food is amazing. I'm gonna end the video here. I actually made 2 of these mini things because they're literally like 2 inches thick, like 2 inches in diameter. So I made 2 of them, which is like super good. I'm gonna finish it off and then I'm gonna go to bed, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, eat some good food. Love you, and I'm grateful for you. Bye.